Welcome, welcome. We are here live to bring you the best education as you prepare for your retirement. I'm your host, CR Talene, and I want to talk about last week. Last week, we had Jim Blair talking all about Social Security. Now, this week, I'm really excited. We have Mr. HSA Roy Ramthun from HSA Consulting Services. Roy, welcome to our show today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I love these live shows, and Dave is out this week. And he is my usual guest, but what a treat to have you. You are a nationally recognized expert on health savings accounts and a healthcare policy advisor at the White House. I believe that was under President George W. Bush.
Yes, it was.
So, Roy, tell me a little bit more about you so we can get our audience familiar with who you are.
So, for today's discussion, what matters most is that I led the implementation of the HSA program when it was created by Congress late in 2003. That meant I was there in the early days as the IRS was writing the rules and regulations to help people understand exactly what it means to participate in an HSA, who can do that, how can they take advantage of it, because sometimes when you read a law, it's not always clear. So I really found that I was passionate about HSAs as I understood all of those details. Spent a lot of my time trying to help everybody else understand what those details were, and thought, this is something I actually enjoy doing. So I'm thrilled to be on a show like this today to share that with your viewers and help them take full advantage of the HSA. And I've been doing that for the last 20 years.
And Roy, does that passion still drive you today?
Absolutely. I love what I do.
That's awesome. So how do we get the younger generation maybe to see the value in what HSAs are?
Well, I definitely think that it's all about thinking about your future and understanding that if you start early and start contributing often, that you'll be able to set aside money that will make your future much brighter than what it is to do today. Most of us, want to spend all the money that we have, and I remember those early days where finally getting my first paycheck, and it's like, what all can I spend this on? I had a lot more wants than I had needs. But I did remember something that my parents taught me, and that was don't forget to pay yourself. And by that, they meant put some money aside for your future. You never know what's right around the corner, whether you're going to have some event in your life where suddenly you need money and you don't have it because you've just been spending it all. So I actually teach Boy Scouts about these types of concepts. There's a personal management merit badge, and one of those concepts is financial management. And, I've learned some rules of thumb over the years, such as, having at least 6 months worth of your expenses saved up that you can easily access in case you ever need to. We don't know what is going to happen with our employment or our other situations. So there are many other things that we could talk about in that realm, but this at least gets us starting on a discussion of how to start saving money.
I agree. And just to throw in, Dave and I are both Eagle Scouts, and we both participated in the Boy Scouts. So that's something that we're very
Awesome.
passionate about, is helping people to not only take action, but put a plan in place and know what we're talking about. And that's why we have guests like you on the show each week, so we can get people to be more aware of how to make a better decision in their retirement and even getting to retirement, because the last thing we want them to do is make that decision at the door. So we're doing all of these shows to really help people to get on a good path starting now.
Well, unfortunately, I am not an Eagle Scout. Both of our sons are. Wish I was. Didn't have that opportunity available to me growing up. But I've learned to appreciate a lot of the program and love being a scout leader and to help young people like our current scouts understand these concepts.
Well, that's wonderful. And I'm grateful again that you joined us today and you're sharing some information with us. And I want to let everyone know as we're getting ready to get to our live show, just as we're getting ready to start everything, is first of all, welcome. Welcome to all those who are joining us that are here live and those on replay. We love each week having you all join and be part of this. And just a reminder, the way our show works is we take all the questions that have come in from each of you from to our website, to social media platforms, webinars, and so many other places, and our team spends a lot of time putting these questions together for these live shows. Now, today we are talking specifically HSAs. So we encourage you, if you have a question on this topic and you want to go ahead and get that submitted live on Facebook or YouTube, we'll do our best to get those over to Roy. And that's how the show works. So, Roy, if you're ready to get started, I want to throw my first question up here.
I'm ready.
Okay, well, let's get to my first one here from Nancy. And Nancy is asking, when is the best time to begin contributing to an HSA?
Well, I'm going to easily say that by you've got to start as soon as you have the opportunity to do that. Again, there are so many things that we don't know about what our future holds. And even if that's not until retirement, there's no better time than the present to start putting money in the HSA. The good news is we never have to worry about that money expiring or go away. There's no use it or lose it rule like other similar accounts. So every dollar you put in there automatically stays in your account as long as you don't take it out.
Is there an advantage to somebody that's in their 20s, or are they too young to start with an HSA?
There's never a too early of an age to start. You cannot be claimed as a dependent on somebody else's tax return. So once you are not dependent on your parents and you have your own life and your own job, definitely that is a great time. And I'm sure in your other discussions about saving for retirement, you underscore the message of saving early and often, and the power that compounding has, as well as investing in terms of growing balances. All those concepts apply to HSAs too.
And one of the things you talked about earlier is you talked about needs versus wants. I know when I was in my 20s and 30s, a lot of times there was a lot of things that I wanted, and I just didn't always have the funds. But let's talk about, even if we set aside $50 or $100 a month and put towards this, is that something that you're going to find beneficial, especially with these accounts?
Absolutely. Every little bit counts. And if you can add interest or other types of gains to those 50s or $100, that's, free money that's going to accumulate in your account, which will then be there for your benefit when you need to actually use the money to pay for something.
Now, what if we're in our 50s or 60s? Is that too late to start saving?
It's never too late. You're going to be have on Medicare at around 65, and so it might only be a 5 years or 10 years that you have to plan and put that money aside. But every little bit helps. You're going to have those Medicare expenses, if it's nothing else for the premiums. So why not put the money aside so that you can pay those premiums on a tax-free basis? You don't have any other way of doing that. Everything else would be sort of after tax.
I think any way you look at it, you need a lot of money for healthcare and retirement. And I feel like if you just let your HSA funds have that potential to grow to help support your future needs is a really great way to get started.
You're completely right.
Well, let's get down to my next one here from Katie. Katie is age 64. I just put a lot of these in here so we can get a good context of what we're talking about. Katie wants to know, can I use my health savings account to pay for Medicare premiums?
And the good answer is yes, you can. You can do that not only for your Medicare premiums, but also the Medicare premiums of your spouse. And if you may have a tax dependent, such as a disabled child who's on Medicare, you would also be able to pay their Medicare premiums on a tax-free basis. Now, when I'm talking about Medicare premiums, I'm talking about traditional Medicare, like Parts A, B, and D. but also a Medicare Advantage plan, which more and more seniors have, which kind of is a replacement for all of their Medicare coverage. The only Medicare premium that you cannot pay tax-free with your HSA funds is something known as a Medicare supplement plan, or a Medigap policy, if you have that. Now, the last little rule that you need to be aware of is you cannot pay any of these premiums unless you, the account owner, are age 65 or older. So if you and your spouse have different ages, you need to think about which of you, or maybe both of you, have an HSA account. And there's a lot of reasons why sometimes two accounts is better than one. To the previous question about, people not starting to contribute until they're 55 or so, once you do turn 55, you can put an additional $1,000 in your account every year from that point on, as long as you're eligible to do so.
And you did talk about Medicare Part B and D. Does that also include deductibles and copays?
Yes, all of those out-of-pocket expenses, and there will be plenty. Also, expenses that maybe Medicare does not cover. There are a lot of things that Medicare doesn't cover, such as dental, vision, and hearing care. A lot of long-term care is not covered by Medicare. That's something that people just do not really understand very well. So, and then there's going to be other expenses that we won't even get into right now. So, definitely worthwhile putting as much into your HSA as you're allowed to.
And once you get Medicare, can you keep contributing to your HSAs?
The unfortunate thing is no. Once you enroll in Medicare, from that point on, you lose your eligibility to contribute to your HSA. However, you never lose any of the money that you've accumulated to that point. So even though I can't add new money, I can always use the existing money that's in the account.
And I love that. And I think that's something, again, I was going to ask about. So I think it's important to just think clearly and carefully about your Medicare enrollment decisions once you become eligible, I guess would be the kind of the final piece for that.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's move down to Xander's question. Xander is asking, what are qualifying medical expenses so I do not get taxed if I use my HSA funds?
I get this question a lot, and there is actually a publication by the Internal Revenue Service. It's publication number 502, and I encourage everybody to download that from the IRS website because it has the most exhaustive list of expenses that you could actually use your HSA funds to pay for. And that is important because I think when people look at this, they realize there's a lot more things than they ever thought of that could be eligible expenses. And so I encourage them to save as much money as they can in their HSA now that they understand all of these other expenses. So start there. And if you have specific questions, I'd be happy to answer those at a later time. Sometimes it does depend on facts and circumstances of people's situations. So, but that's the best place to start.
Now, I just want to ask a question because I've been kind of torn about this sometimes, but if it's on the list, does that always guarantee reimbursement?
It does not always guarantee reimbursement. The primary purpose of this publication that I mentioned is technically for those people who are itemizing their medical expenses and deducting them on their tax return. There are a few differences between that and what the HSA says. The HSA is more expansive in some areas, such as over-the-counter drugs, feminine hygiene products, but it's more restrictive in other cases. Generally, insurance premiums are not an eligible expense for HSAs, even though this publication will say that is deductible expense, which is true, but not for HSAs.
I was impressed with the list of how detailed it was too. I mean, there's things on there. It called everything out from dental floss to cotton swabs. I mean, it was very detailed.
And over the years, people have had a lot of questions.
I'm sure.
A lot of times, too, once you're participating in an HSA, your administrator may also have a list that's even more detailed that typically you should be able to rely on in case you have questions. So, be sure to check out those resources too.
And Roy, I want to pull up a question here to see if you might be able to help Elliot. Elliot's one of our weekly viewers. He's asking, how quickly can I get my Medicare card after I enroll? Would you know that?
So you can actually sign up before you turn 65. So you should have your Medicare card in hand by the time you turn 65 if you do that in advance. Usually it doesn't take that long. The general rule is if you turn 65 in, say, the month of October, your Medicare effective date is likely going to be the 1st of October. The only exception is if your birthday falls on October 1st. And in that case, Medicare starts your coverage on September 1st. So I've never heard of any problem with people not getting their cards in a timely manner. But if you're unsure, you can call Medicare. It's like 1-800-Medicare or something like that. It shouldn't be that hard to figure it out.
Yeah.
Or call your local Social Security office.
Yes, very well said. And thank you so much, Elliot, for that live question from YouTube. And Elliot's, in fact, he has a home down in Florida, and it's kind of where the hurricane came through. And in fact, we've got a team going down there this Friday, Saturday to go help clean up. I'm in Georgia, so it's about an 8-hour drive. So Port Saguda, right by where Elliot has one of his places, is we're going to be right down there cleaning up. So I'm hoping maybe I can at least say hi or run into him, but it's always heartbreaking when we see that coming through, as we've got even teams in Puerto Rico that deal with so much. Like you said at the very beginning, Roy, there's so many things we just don't understand that could happen in our lives so quickly. And this is just one of those examples.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get down to my next one here from CJ. Am I able to reimburse myself for previous medical expenses after I open an HSA?
Typically, no. So your HSA expenses that you can reimburse are on a go forward basis only. So, you might be hanging on to receipts from 2-3 years ago. Unfortunately, you cannot use your HSA funds to pay for those expenses. But starting when you open your account and going forward, all your future expenses would be able to be reimbursed tax-free. So hang on to those receipts. Even if you're in a year where you've lost your eligibility to add new funds, if you regain your eligibility later and put new money in, you might be able to put in enough money to cover those expenses that you incurred during the meantime. But again, nothing before your HSA account was established.
And let me just step back and ask you, Roy, what does it mean to reimburse yourself with your health savings account?
You don't have to submit a receipt to anyone. You literally can take a cash withdrawal from your HSA. So if you have a receipt for $25 and you want to reimburse yourself, you would withdraw $25 in cash from your account, and you hang on to your receipt and you report that you withdrew $25 from your account, and you never have to show that receipt to anyone unless the IRS knocks on your door and says, we would like to audit your tax return. And that doesn't, again, guarantee that you will have to produce that receipt, but you shouldn't have to worry about them asking any questions because you have the justification that you need, that $25 withdrawal was for an eligible expense.
And I like this question from CJ also, because the keyword here is after I open an HSA account. So what happens if we're trying to collect something and we haven't opened an account? I mean, I'm assuming people are still, they're trying to figure that part out.
Yeah, we do get people who sign up for the right insurance that makes them eligible for the HSA, but sometimes they don't get around to opening their account for months. Sometimes it doesn't even click in that they should do this until the year is over and now it's tax time, and like, oh, I think I remember somebody saying something about, being able to deduct these contributions on my taxes. I better get going and get that account. Well, they've just missed 12 months or more of expenses that they could have been counting towards that reimbursement tax free from their account. So try to get your account as open as early as possible. Employers typically are very helpful in that regard. They typically work with the financial institution to get those accounts set up so that on day one, when your new insurance starts, that makes you eligible to contribute to the HSA, your account is set up and ready to go. So that's what we want to have happen. But for those who maybe didn't pay attention to all of the forms that had to be checked or signed or whatever, pay attention to that because it matters.
And when we talk about reimbursing ourselves, if you don't have the money in the account the day the expense incurred, can you still figure out how to make that work?
Yes, you can. So let's say I open my account, I've got that. A month later, I have an expense. But there's only $25 in my account because that was the minimum to get the account open. And so my expenses say $200. Well, if I haven't already maximized the amount I can put into my account for this year, I can add $200 or at least $175 so that I have $200 in my account and turn right around and reimburse myself. Now, there's advantages to not reimbursing yourself right away. And we talked about, allowing your account funds to grow through interest or gains on investments and things like that. So, if it works with your cash flow to not reimburse yourself every time you have an expense, I will definitely encourage that.
And what mistakes do you see people making as they're trying to think about always reimbursing themselves or getting started with this account?
Well, they think that the money expires at the end of the year. And that's because there is confusion between this account and something similar known as a flexible spending account. In some cases, a health reimbursement account. In most of those cases, that money does expire at the end of the year. So you do have to use those funds up. But the HSA is more like an IRA. You put the money in, it never goes away. It stays there until you decide to take the money out.
I love that. Well, let's keep going. Let's see. We've just got a few more minutes here, so let's see if we can get Peter's question on. How can I open an HSA?
So there's any number of ways to open your HSA. What I would recommend that you do is see if, number one, your employer offers an opportunity. If not, absolutely, make sure that you take advantage of anything that they offer. If they don't, ask around in your community. Do any financial institutions, banks, credit unions, or otherwise offer HSAs? And if they do, will they offer one to you? If you are at your wit's end and can't find one, there is a website that I recommend called HSAsearch.com that has a very extensive list of financial institutions that will open HSAs across the country. Pick one that looks attractive to you and see if that meets your needs.
Do we need to be picky when we're looking at choosing an HSA? Like, we need to look for fees or banking options or things of that nature?
Well, like any financial account, fees and other things can add up. And so, yes, we don't want to be giving all of the money that we put into the account away or have to pay a lot of fees for that. Most financial products have some kind of a fee, but the fees definitely have gotten lower over time and improved. But you may also be looking for more flexibility with your account, such as, hey, I want to invest my funds, and maybe the financial institution that I'm talking to doesn't offer investments or won't let me invest any of my money until I hit a balance of, say, $2,000. Well, maybe I think that's important to me to be able to invest all of my money up front. So, look for those specific details, shop around. It's like any other financial account. You want to get the best deal that you can.
I love that. Let me ask you a question here from Harrison that's joining us live on Facebook. Any chance they will get rid of the high deductible requirements for HSAs?
Well, that is my top priority. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, and I'm involved with any number of coalitions and others trying to get that law changed so that people who have high out of pocket expenses, be they through deductibles or other plan designs, would be able to take advantage of the HSA just like those who have to meet the specific requirements can do. I think the need is there. There are many out of pocket expenses as we have seen deductibles grow for virtually all plans. That didn't used to be the case 20 years ago. And so I think the need is there, and I believe HSAs are the best available tool, especially since so many people don't have any other options available to them.
All right. Thank you so much, Harrison, also for that live question. We're going to continue on here. I probably have maybe one or two more questions I'm going to see if we can squeeze in here with you. All right, let's get Sven on the board here. If I pass before my spouse, can I leave the HSA to her?
Yes, but a very important thing that you must do is name her as your beneficiary. I've gotten a number of sob story cases that have called and said, my spouse did not name me the beneficiary on their account, and now they're telling me I can't access the funds, which is very unfortunate. They need to name you as the beneficiary, and the advantage is that the account funds will then pass to them tax-free, but only if you name them as the beneficiary. If there's no beneficiary on the account, there's nothing that the financial institution can do. And then it becomes a taxable transfer of funds to you. So make sure that you are named or your spouse is named as the beneficiary on that account. And there are some states that require, notification if you name somebody other than a spouse. I don't know if those are the community property states or the others, but pay attention to that and do that for all your accounts, frankly.
Now, let's say your spouse takes over the account. Will they face a tax penalty if they would withdraw funds from the account to pay for non-qualified medical expenses?
So anyone that uses the funds in the account for things other than the eligible medical expenses will pay income tax and a 20% penalty. Now, that 20% penalty goes away after you turn 65, but you would still pay income tax. So, when people ask, should I put money into my IRA or my HSA? You really have nothing to lose by putting the money in your HSA. And frankly, because most of us would expect to use a lot more healthcare in retirement, the tax advantage of the HSA is that much better. And if you decide to use it for, living expenses or what have you, it's no worse than your IRA where you would just pay ordinary income tax.
I appreciate that. And let me ask too, if your spouse is no longer with you and maybe you're looking at putting a child as a beneficiary, how does that work?
So you can name anybody as a beneficiary of your account. Unfortunately, if they're not your spouse, that person may have to pay taxes on the funds that are transferred to them after that. The good news is that for up to a year after your death, your heirs or the executor of your estate can go and reimburse all of the expenses that you may have incurred up to the point of your death, because you probably didn't get around to doing that. And that money can come to you on a tax-free basis because those were eligible expenses at that time. But you got to do it within a year after the death. That also reduces the value of the account that might become taxable to you after that point.
Well, Roy, it has come our 30 minutes, and I can't believe how fast it has come and gone. And I really appreciate your time. And I want to remind those, if you didn't get a chance to get your question answered today, or you missed your chance, don't worry. You can always submit your questions at retirementriskadvisors.com/questions. Now, Roy, if people have questions and want to get a hold of you, what's the best option for them to work with you or get to know you, your answers?
Well, if you go to one of my websites, askmrhsa.com, and you have a detailed question about your particular situation, you can submit your question and I will get a response back to you, typically within a day or two. We charge a nominal fee for that. But, if you have questions that really you need help with and don't know who else to turn to, that is always available to you. If it's a more generic question like, can I, participate in an HSA after I enroll in Medicare? I probably am not going to charge you for that, but you can see on the website how to contact me there.
Great. Thank you so much. And I want to remind everyone that next week we'll have Dave join us again for our weekly show. Every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time, we will be here always talking about retirement. And you can find more details at retirementriskadvisors.com. And again, you can go to askmrhsa.com if you have questions or want to get in touch with Roy. And don't forget that. And I also want to let you know that we do have a live webinar today at 3 p.m. Central. It's our flagship webinar. It is Getting Safely Through Retirement. And you can sign up at retirementriskadvisors.com/events. And again, this is where you just get the foundation, get to understand what retirement is and how to move forward, or even if you're just off track and you need to get back on track. The whole point we started this show was to help people to take advantage of getting through retirement or just getting to retirement, about making better choices. And Roy, I just want to thank you again for your time. This has been an amazing show.
My pleasure. I'm happy to come back anytime. There's so much more we could talk about.
I definitely agree. All right, everyone. We'll see you guys again next week. And Roy, hopefully we'll catch up another time.
Thanks. Good luck.